Welcome to the first VDX.TV webinar of 2021. My name is Gareth. I'm one of the senior sales managers here in the UK, and I'm delighted to be hosting this webinar on what really is a hot topic with the industry right now, that of connected TV, or indeed CTV, depending on where you come from in the world. And today we're asking that very simple question: must we CTV, or must we connected TV? And we have a special guest today from Kantar and someone from VDX.TV. Before I go and introduce our guests, just a couple of ground rules, as it were, throughout proceedings. Firstly, with regards to asking questions, within your Zoom webinar window, you should have the option to type in a question. We invite those questions, we encourage those questions, so please feel free to throw them into the chat box throughout the course of the talk, and then hoping we have enough time come the end of the talk, we'll run through those questions. For those that we can't get to or don't get to, we'll obviously respond to you in kind via email. Of course, the event itself is actually being recorded, and we'll actually send that video out to you guys afterwards as well. So, on to our guests. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Nasir Newman from Kantar Group. Nasir is an industry expert in ad effectiveness and client director at Kantar, and leads on such things as global agency, publisher, and advertiser measurement solutions. Welcome, Nasir.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Just a little reminder, Kantar is a world-leading evidence-based insight and consultancy company, and Nasir herself has recently completed an MA in advertising planning and strategy, so he's clearly well-versed in a lot of what we're going to discuss today. Secondly, I'd like to introduce VDX.TV's very own Brian Melmoth. Brian's been at the business now for 11 years. He's based in the New York office, so it's relatively early for him right now. And he's our VP of Insights. So he provides detailed analysis on consumer behaviors, works with any number of brands at one time, on behalf of the respective offices within VDX, and offers expert guidance to do with matter with analytics, research, and indeed measurements. Hello, Brian.
Hi, thanks, Gareth.
Good man, good man. And not that you needed a reminder as to who VDX.TV is, of course, but we create video-driven experiences that integrates both the brand's TV and digital messaging with the whole intention of captivating viewers, compelling action, and ultimately converting awareness into response, be that across the connected TV space, while we're here today, or indeed across traditional digital video, publisher sites, and so on and so forth. So moving on, we're going to be covering a couple of topics today, the what and the whys, so essentially the nuts and the bolts of the connected TV space, some best practices we think that you should consider moving forward. Obviously key, of course, in all of this space is how we measure success, and then a couple of case studies. So I'll hand over now to Brian. Brian, take it away.
Thanks again. Let me minimize my video view here. The perils of presenting on a single screen laptop. I'm going to be on autopilot. If for some reason my connection gets glitchy, please jump in. Although I might not notice, just keep talking. We're going to start with the what and why of CTV, which is really intended to be a very brief intro. A lot of people on this call are already familiar with CTV and probably quite familiar with it in their personal lives, but we'll just run through this quickly to get everyone up to speed. What is OTT and what is CTV? The two terms are often paired when it comes to an introduction like this, and I think just as a guideline, it's helpful to know that telco abbreviations tend to be very obtuse and obscure, OTT being no exception. That stands for over the top. What it means by over the top, I swear nobody really knows. I'm sure some people think they know, but another expert out there is going to disagree with you. That channel switcher that we have when we have cable TV is called a set-top box. So over the top probably means something about that set-top box, although it could just as well be something an 80s sitcom character would excitedly say when things were cool. Over the top, man. And I'm sure that's probably why it caught on, seeing how those were the halcyon days of cable TV. Over the top, it just means instead of coming through your coaxial cable or coming through an antenna, over the top means it's delivered using the IP protocol that our internet connection uses. So OTT equals internet delivery. Any content can be delivered over the internet including web pages, including voice calls like I'm on now. And of course, television content can be delivered over the internet. But OTT is agnostic as to what device you're watching it on. You can be watching internet delivered television content on your phone, for example. Not on Quibi anymore, but it's still popular, I hear. CTV comes from the digital space, the digital advertising space. Digital acronyms tend to be quite broad and generic. CTV just means connected TV. And I think those of us in digital marketing would naturally assume if it's connected, it must be connected to the internet. But I don't think that's necessarily an assumption many people would make. But that's what it means. The C in connected TV means connected to the internet. So CTV starts with a device, that big screen, and says this big television screen, which in the past had been pulling signal off the air or from a cable line, is now pulling information off the internet. Both of these terms converge when we're watching that big screen and watching Hulu or Roku or Pluto or whatever it is, where we're watching on demand. We have a nice interface to navigate. We can skip ahead and skip back. And most importantly to this audience, we've got digital marketing that can adapt to the content, the situation, the time, and the household, and be best targeted for that event. Why do consumers love CTV? I think, again, for most of us, it's obvious. You get your content on demand. There's a huge variety of programming, so much so that it can be a fatiguing experience sometimes. Thankfully, we have some smart recommendation engines that are getting better at predicting what we want to watch. But certainly the amount of content that's become available to us has increased, I would guess, by at least 100-fold since OTT began delivering television content via the internet. The interface, I'd love to talk more about that because I think it's really underappreciated. And I don't mean to editorialize, but telcos are not known for creating great interfaces. That's why Apple was able to come in and smash up the mobile phone race, and poor RIM is I think bankrupt at this point. And consumers especially appreciate that, the ease of navigation, the sense of control they have, and again, the recommendation engines that pair them to interesting content. And of course, costs are lower. We don't have to pay for the bundles anymore. Americans don't have to pay $12 to $14 to ESPN for sports shows they may never watch, but were contractually obligated to pay for back when bundling was a thing. The uptick in consumer demand is undeniable. More than 50% of consumers in the big 5 European countries consider CTV to be their primary source of television entertainment. And the difference here is not in anything about CTV necessarily, but about how entrenched the telco and cable systems are in delivering content. So how easy is it to switch? How much content has become available in these countries? And just stereotypically how quickly these countries are spinning on a technological dime shows how quickly CTV is being adopted. And all the predictions are that CTV will overtake terrestrial television either this year or next. Consumers are happy to watch ad-supported content. They prefer ad-supported content to subscription-based content. After 1 or 2 subscriptions, you show a lot of fatigue, and with the fractionalization of content, there's no one provider that's going to give you everything. And ad load is relatively light. Ads are personalized. They're not bothered by the ads. And one thing we're going to hit upon throughout this presentation is the context of watching CTV is different. It's a social experience. Most people are not watching that television screen alone when they turn on CTV. And that's vitally important to marketers on many levels, from targeting to content to creative, and especially by the fact that we're social animals, and any storytelling, any messaging that's being presented in a social context is more familiar and more accessible and more approachable to the people who are watching that big screen. Marketers likewise are loving CTV. Again, and I keep mentioning this, the targeting. And I wish I had more time to speak about targeting. I think what's underappreciated when it comes to targeting is that variety of content is allowing us to match advertising to content in a way that we were never able to do with CTV. as our marketing director keeps reminding me, CTV is a choice, not a habit. And when you turn on that CTV program, it very much aligns with who you are, what you identify with, and what you love. And those ads can be tailored to your interests based on the content you're watching. And that's true for both interest in what you're buying or what you're researching, but also who you are. There's a very strong demographic aspect to content on CTV. Measurement on CTV is relatively very good. Those screens don't walk out the door. Those devices stay put. The IP addresses are stable. They don't have cookies, but neither will any of us starting next year. And I think we're going to hit an inflection point where CTV targeting actually becomes as good or better than targeting our desktop and mobile. And CTV offers incremental reach. These are often viewers you can't find elsewhere. They're not watching linear. They're not necessarily on the websites that you're advertising on. It's a great way to add consumers to your campaign. No surprise that marketers are quickly adopting CTV. Spend across the EU is expected to increase. In fact, more than double by 2025. We see this in the Middle East and Africa as well. In South Africa, we're seeing rapid adoption, 20% year over year. So every year it's increasing 20% up to 2023, and that's a pandemic time statistic. These are all statistics that are less than a year old. So if you're not feeling the wave now, if you're not feeling the winds pushing you towards CTV, my guess is you will very, very soon. I now want to switch to best practices and give myself a bit of a breather by handing it over to Nasia to walk us through, from the research side, what she's seeing as some of the best ways that marketers are embracing CTV.
Thanks, Brian. And I think it's really interesting to see
Just in time.
how some of these stats that you've shown will be accelerated and have been accelerated by COVID and these restrictions and lockdown. And I don't know about anybody else, but I'm definitely a subscriber to this binging culture. And it has become now a social event. And it's going to be interesting to see how this develops over time, because these behaviors are probably going to be here to stay. And as the TV landscape becomes more fragmented with various ways of consumption, it's important to understand that linear and connected TV can serve different purposes. So the adoption of CTV, as we've seen, is increasing quite rapidly across Europe. And it's due to the ability to allow people to target these specific audiences. And we already know that linear TV is dominant at driving reach and frequency, and video on demand, a branch of the CTV world, is great at driving incremental reach, specifically in that 30 to 44 core audience. So entwined into a multi-channel campaign, video on demand should prove to be more effective. And video on demand is also great at driving some of the lower funnel metrics, such as consideration and purchase intent, due to its ability for that specific targeting, as I've mentioned, and tailored messaging for various audiences. So it's not going to be a case of out with the old and in with the new, but rather understanding the purposes that each channel serves and how they can complement each other. And Brian has clearly laid out a strong case as to why CTV should be part of your media mix and is becoming increasingly important. And this is further emphasized by the ability for CTV to build short-term awareness. And we know at Kantar that ads that run across connected, streaming, and over-the-top TV are more easily recalled and build persuasion in a similar way to online videos these graphs show below. So if there is an immediate call to action in a campaign, whether it's offer-based or seasonal, connected TV can help land those messages and drive consideration and eventually have an effect on buying behavior. And campaigns that have connected TV as a channel will have to be well integrated and customized to complement other channels being utilized in the campaign. So we know that integrated and customized campaigns are 57% more effective than non-integrated campaigns. But less than half of the campaigns that we measure at Kantar are both well integrated and customized. And by integrated, I mean things such as cohesive messaging, utilizing the same brand cues, and having prominent branding across all creatives. So this to me is that advertisers need to think about having consistency in messaging and executions across all channels, because it's no longer about TV first planning, but about the best creative concept that's going to work across all the chosen media. So if this isn't paramount and thought about first, then connected TV is not going to be able to shine and bear fruit in your media mix.
Yeah, thank you. So at VDXCV, we call this the halo effect. When we look at the synergy and ad exposure across different devices. When we first extended our business to CTV, our message to digital marketers was simply, hey, look, you have another screen here. And I think what we lost in that first push was, yeah, you have another screen, but you have to appreciate how these different contexts are different, how people are either leaning back or sitting forward, the social nature. I even did a study that I love to reference on how the act of touching your mobile device makes your relationship to that device and the content on that device feel much more personal and much more a part of you. And that's something that marketers have to adapt to and understand when they're developing different ad experiences across these devices. In explaining that, I've again veered farther from the message that we want to hone in on, which is that all of these things can work together exceptionally well. That big screen, it's a very immersive, compelling storytelling experience. It brings brand awareness, it brings desire. And then across desktop and mobile, you're offering consumers an opportunity to explore your message, to feel in control of what they want from you in terms of the conversation and information that they're getting. And it feels more real to them. It starts to appeal to the other side of the brain, the more rational side of the brain that says, okay, well, that's a cool dream. And actually, I think I can do this. I think I can figure out how to buy it. I think I can figure out how to afford it. And I think I can rationalize it to the rest of the people in my house. So we did an internal study when developing our ad units, an in-lab study, that showed, as you see here, the incredible synchronicity that happens when you start to layer ad experiences for the same brand with a similar message across multiple devices. Of course, once we launch your campaign, we would turn to a research firm like Kantar, which has much more experience in measuring the ad effect out in the wild. I seem to always get ahead of myself. Where do these CTV ads fit? Well, as I alluded to, you're starting with that storytelling mode when people are leaning back, they're willing to listen, they have a more open mind. Several studies have shown this, both academic and industry studies. People are generally less critical, more open-minded, more prone to free association when they're lying back on their couch. Which isn't to say those other concerns aren't going to prop up, but they don't prop up when people are leaning back and watching their show. And then again, when you're talking about mobile and desktop, hands on keyboard, thumb on screen, you really want to give people a very distinct reminder that this is the story we started to talk about on that big screen, but now it's your turn. You tell us what you're interested in. We'll let you explore our message and in many cases follow it up to an online purchase or transaction. Nasia, I don't want to keep steamrolling. Do you have other thoughts on this here?
Yeah, I think the point on leaning back and leaning forward will actually tie into the next slide quite well, because it's all about the context in which you're advertising in. And with connected TV, there are a plethora of creative choices, from to allow users to actually gain insight into a product or a service in a playful way, from either toggling between different models or colors of a product while the advert plays, giving consumers the options to complete a quiz, for example, or even view a travel destination in 360 degrees, which I would love to do right now. As CTV develops, there'll be more opportunities to experiment with interactivity and personalized creativity, which is particularly effective if you're looking to drive time spent, consideration, or conversions. However, as I mentioned, interaction has to be done in the right context of CTV. So we know that 50% of a campaign success is down to the strength of the creative. So it is something to focus on first. And for CTV, viewers still want that passive viewing experience that doesn't require the effort of making a decision or picking up the remote, or any physical effort. However, consumers are used to interactivity on other devices, as Brian has mentioned, where it feels more natural. So if a consumer saw a QR code on the TV, for example, like the example we have on screen here, and interacted on it with their mobile to explore a 5-star result, again, I would love to do that right now, then that would be a more natural fit, and bring the ad to life whilst also enabling a frictionless experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of marketers who are starting from desktop and mobile are saying, "Oh, now we have this big screen. Can we click on it? Can we have those 360s that are more interactive using remotes?" I don't think that's necessarily a good strategy, even though it will probably become available down the line.
Yeah,
There will be a small percentage of people, certainly with a travel ad right now, who are going to be super excited and want to grab their remote and see more and imagine
yeah,
themselves at that destination. But in other cases, and we know this from our research with Kantar, we'll ask people, "Hey, do you remember seeing an ad for Best Buy?" And some will, but then if we show them the ad, a much greater percentage will be like, "Oh yeah, I remember seeing that." And that translates into the desktop and mobile unit. We want to use the same color palette. We want to suggest that this message will soon be available on their other devices with the ability to explore it. And that connection is made really quite effortlessly and quickly, in the same way that people will remember seeing an ad on television once you present them with that visual cue. Now let's talk about how to measure CTV. This could be an hour in itself, but we just want to clear up a few misconceptions without losing sight of the fact that CTV is a great medium for measurement, and far so than the technologies we've had available before.
so I'm going to go through some of the ways we measure at Kantar, and this is always going to be evolving as this space evolves and quite rapidly. We use brand lift insights to measure the impact of the connected TV campaign and measure the overall effectiveness by looking at how well the CTV campaign increased awareness, as well as those lower funnel metrics such as purchase intent and consideration amongst a specific target audience. So we can examine how the CTV campaign helped the brand gain share of voice in the space of its competitors, and look at the value of celebrity involvement or sponsorships or promotions in terms of moving those brand KPIs. And finally, we look at the creative message and its contribution to the overall campaign's success or muted results. And then we advise on how we can make all of these things better for next time. We use a number of methodologies to measure the effects of exposure, the first being passive TV ad tracking. And this involves CTV exposure logs, IP address matching across our panel to show us households that were exposed to the campaign and households that weren't. And where this isn't feasible, we also employ opportunity to see questions, which are quite a standard practice in industry, to isolate panelists' media consumption habits in relation to the CTV campaign and where the media was served. And we use a survey-based control exposed research design to measure the difference in attitudes between these two closely matched groups. And so from that, we can analyze the attitudinal effects of CTV advertising exposure. And this is achieved by simultaneous and continuous surveying during the CTV campaign. And this ensures that both the control and exposed cells are filled evenly over time, meaning that both groups have an equal chance of being influenced by external factors. And both of these groups are matched in terms of demographics, behavior, so that any differences in between these two groups can actually be attributed to the CTV campaign. And moving on to case studies, and I finally like to end with a case study for a men's personal care brand campaign run by one of our media agency clients. The campaign was for a product extension of a contemporary brand of men's deodorant and body wash, and the campaign focused heavily on video and a visual presence, and wanted to reach the millennial men on the places where they were consuming fun and relaxing content. The media agency made connected TV buys across several leading platforms, as well as running video assets on YouTube and display across leading men's websites. The agency decided to commission Kantar to conduct a brand lift study to understand the effectiveness of this campaign and whether connected TV was effective in terms of a strategy for influencing this key demographic. And I can't disclose the exact numbers of the results, but what I can reveal is that advertising on these connected TV platforms significantly increased top of mind awareness. So that's people thinking of this category, thinking of this particular brand, and made those who were exposed to the campaign more favorable and eventually likely to buy. The media agency then went on to buy more CTV impressions for this campaign and continued their expansion into connected TV by offering it to other clients that were also trying to target this core demographic.
Thanks, Nasia. So we have a case study of our own, and because we own it, we can give you a little more details in terms of the actual measures. A lot of secrecy abounds with these things because everyone is looking for a first mover advantage and trying to adopt best practices before the competition. But when we did that in-lab study, which, to be clear, was very well designed. The session from these respondents was well over an hour. There was a lot of ad clutter, so it wasn't a sort of contrived experience in any way. It was literally in a living room environment. And we ran this controlled study across using the same ad experience across multiple devices for 8 different verticals, 8 different industries. Auto is one of our most we have a great many auto clients, and we have a great relationship with auto manufacturers and auto brands. And so we were very happy to see that indeed for auto, we again saw this synchronicity, this reinforcement when serving ad experiences across multiple devices, again with natural content in between, with a lot of other ad clutter. We saw purchase intent, which is the gold standard for ad effectiveness. Purchase intent went up 65% when we added CTV, and also impressively, purchase intent went up over 160% when adding desktop and mobile. Now, we're always trying to get these different teams to work together, the brand team and the direct response team. With auto, there's less of a barrier there, but it again just really speaks to this idea of having all of your efforts working together and setting a strategy that will align everything to a specific message and a specific goal. In this case, this was an entry-level auto. This was a car that either a first-time buyer or a less affluent buyer might be interested in, and we needed that CTV experience to inspire, to show that exhilaration of driving down an empty road. But then the desktop and mobile units were needed to shore up, again, that other side of the brain that was thinking, can I really afford this? What would the payments be like? Is this car going to be reliable? These are all aspects of the sale that are specific to this auto model. For a different car, we might be talking about towing capacity, or we might be talking about reliability reviews, or we might be just enhancing the luxurious aspects of the car that we first showed on screen with details about wood paneling and fine craftsmanship and whatever it is. But for almost any industry, you need to start with that inspiration and then guide users through their own concerns and finally lead them to the purchase point. That's the path to purchase. And we find that these ad messages work so much better when you have all of the screens working together. Gareth, why don't you wrap this up for us?
Thank you. That's very, very kind of you, Brian, and thank you, Nasia, of course. Just before we do kind of wrap up, I think it'd be great if we could hear from everyone at home. So hopefully you'll have a poll that's about to be launched. But obviously it just covers the subject matter that we've been through today. It'd be great just to kind of hear your thoughts on things. Obviously it's a quick snap poll, But yeah, just to kind of get your opinions on things, that'd be fantastic. If you could fill that out now. For me, I think, look, first and foremost, what a wonderful playground this is, both for consumers, the marketeers, and of course, the brands. I think it's clearly a powerful medium for brands. I think it's, fantastic that we've got the bandwidth in the kind of data technology and the targeting, compared to, for example, linear TV. I think critically, of course, we can see that, the measurement capabilities are clearly there. So, I think, to be honest, we're a really great starting point for what happens next with the connected TV. And of course, that's been sped up because of the onset of the pandemic. But, I think it's really, really encouraging kind of where we are. Nassia, Brian, is there anything else you want to add to that at all?
No, I mean, I'm seeing the results come in after. I'll add some commentary once you announce them. Thanks for everyone that voted. We got a fantastic response on this.
Yeah. I mean, I would say just think about the creative opportunities here, right? So one of the examples I was thinking of is, imagine someone binging a series on 4OD and seeing the same ad. You can utilize that high frequency point in a short space of time to build a story, have something that has a beginning, middle, and end, as someone is obviously in tune and their mind is focused on the content that they're watching. You also have an opportunity to do something a little bit different. So thinking about the frequencies and how you kind of balance that with your content, I think that's an interesting point to consider.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, I mean, look, just we've got a little bit of time now. Just the results are in. Forgive me. Yeah, they've literally just flashed up on my screen. So relatively split, actually. So in first place, incremental reach with 48% of the votes, followed by measurement, interactivity 5%, and then power of data of 13%. But great, and thank you for everyone for obviously answering the poll. That's very much appreciated. Just a couple of questions for the guys, if we could just possibly run through. First question, Nassia, I think is for you with regards to any GDPR restrictions within the connected TV landscape. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think, anyways, the way we kind of go about it at Kantar is ensuring that you're having those opt-ins, because at the survey level as well as your panel level, you obviously do not want to go to a place where you're over personalizing ads. So you're saying, hey, you in your house at this particular time, look at this, because that does start to like cross the line of privacy. But when you are doing the measurement pieces, it's good to have that double opt-in facility where we can actually request opt-ins in surveys. So before they even go on to answer a survey, for example, we're collecting that GDPR and being compliant with that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you for that. Just another quick question here. Have you seen any optimal frequency for CTV campaigns?
Brian, do you want to take that, or I'm happy to jump in as well?
I can say from our end that we haven't seen any evidence of fatigue. There's a variety of programming that people are watching, and there are it's essentially becoming a programmatic landscape where many advertisers are bidding in and showing their content. So it's almost as if the practical risk is quite low. It's not on the forefront of concerns on my mind the way it might have been just a couple years ago when this was a more nascent technology and we had fewer people swimming in the pool. Gareth, this is something you might want to weigh in on as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, like, as the landscape, continues to change. And I think I mentioned, I used the terminology, the fact that it's a bit of a playground for consumers. And I think as it continues to, progress, the technology is going to progress. The capabilities both for the consumer and indeed for brands is going to continue to progress. So I personally can't see any concerns. I mean, look how far we've come in the space of 18 months. And we're seeing at the moment, particularly within the industry, kind of giants buying other giants within this. There's a really, really big play and a really big land grab movement at the moment here. So I continue to just see it changing as the rest of the industry does. Yeah, cool. Right. Last question, Nasia, forgive me. It's another one for you. How do I measure connected TV in a multi-channel campaign?
That is a good question. Well, we would do cross-media measurement, which is looking at various channels in your media mix and your media plan. And we would do the passive measurement for the digital, CTV where feasible, and then opportunity to see questions for the offline media. And then from that, we can look at what media is driving, what um, actual KPIs, the contribution that each is serving, and what is your optimum marketing mix. So there is ways to do it, and we do have studies that have multi-channel campaigns at the moment. So we have the capability of doing that. So it would be cross-media measurement for those sorts of things.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you. Well, unfortunately, that's it for us today. That's our time up. Obviously, look, thank you for all the guests that have joined from their homes, and then obviously, of course, to my guests Nasia and Brian. Thank you, Brian, for waking up extra early for us all the way from New York. Just a reminder, of course, there will be the follow-up email that includes this recording itself. And of course, there's any questions that come in after this, feel free to email us, and we'll, of course, pass those on to the relevant people, and we'll get back to you. Just one final thing for me to say. There was an incredibly short survey after this Zoom call, just to get a little bit of feedback from yourselves, just so that we know that we're doing a good job, or indeed we can continue to learn so that we can do a better job. But that's about it from us. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.